On today's installation video, we'll be showing you how to install a RaceChip on a BMW S58 available across many of the M models. Before installing the RaceChip, please wait until your engine is cool enough to work on. Put your parking brake or emergency brake on. If your vehicle is equipped with an alarm system, please disable it. Pop the hood, roll up the windows, close the doors, and press the lock button on your key fob and move that key fob 30 feet away. You're gonna wait about 10 minutes after for all the electricity to clear from underneath the hood. First step is to remove the side plastic cover so we can get access to the crossbar. So to do so, we're gonna twist until it unlocks, gently pick up and pull away. And we're gonna do the same on the other side as well. Next, we need to remove these lines from the plastic cover that we're gonna remove next. So we're gonna grab a flathead screwdriver and slowly push away. And then we're gonna do the same thing on the other side. Next up is to remove the plastic locking tabs to gain access to the fasteners, holding on the strut brace. With all the locking tabs removed, we're now actually going to remove the plastic piece. Beware, there are two plastic fingers right here, so we don't want to break those off. So I'm going to start up here, gently lift up, and pull down and away. Once we get those free, we can go ahead and work that back corner free by gently pulling back. And you just want to gently wiggle and it will come undone. Now the last thing to do to remove the driver's side plastic panel is to actually remove the cable for the locking mechanism of the hood. So we're gently going to pull together with a pair of needle nose pliers and we can go ahead and pull to remove. Now we're going to do the same thing we just did on the driver's side to the passenger side, removing the plastic locking tabs. The only difference here is that we're going to have the windshield wiper fluid cap to actually remove. Now we can't just pull up, we'll rip it off. This is hard rubber here. So we gently want to pull up, pop the lip, get the rubber around here, and we want to twist the cap to the side and it'll come right through, and then you can remove the whole entire passenger side plastic panel. Next up is to remove the two black fasteners on either side of the strut bar using a 13mm socket. Next step is to actually remove the strut brace. Next up is to use a 6mm flathead screwdriver to loosen all the hose clamps to take the airbox off the engine. Gently pull back on each airline to remove it from the airbox. And then gently lift up to remove the airbox. With the airbox removed, we now have gained access to the sensors that we need to install the RaceChip. Our A connection is going to go to our boost pressure sensor, which is down underneath the motor, which we're going to access from below. Our B connection is right here on the manifold. And our C connection is right here to the camshaft position sensor. To gain access to the A connection to the boost pressure sensor, we're going to remove the bottom engine cover. We're going to use an 8mm socket to remove the bolts. And to remove the engine cover on the bottom, we're just going to simply pull back gently off these tabs and drop the engine cover. And we're also going to need to remove the back engine cover, again with an 8mm socket. Now we're going to unplug the OEM boost sensor plug, pulling back on the locking tab and pulling back. It's going to be a 3-pin sensor. You'll see there's one right next to it. It'll be one with a 90-degree bend on it. With the OEM sensor plug unplugged, we go ahead and install the RaceChip wiring harness and lock in place the gray locking tab. Then take the male end of the RaceChip harness and plug it into that OEM sensor. Lock in place the gray locking tab. With our A connection securely made and moved out of the way of any hot and moving parts, we're going to go ahead and reinstall the underneath engine cover before we move on to the B and C connection. Next up is the B connection on the RaceChip harness to the manifold pressure sensor. To remove, we're going to pull back on the white locking tab and then press down. Gently pull down on the sensor plug to unplug it. Then we'll take the female end of the RaceChip wiring harness, connecting our smooth side to that locking tab, clicking it till it locks and locking it in place. Then we'll take the male end of the RaceChip wiring harness and plug that into the OEM sensor, clicking it and locking it in place. So if applicable, we're going to do our C connection to our camshaft position sensor. If you don't have a C connection on your harness, go ahead and move to the next step. To unplug the OEM sensor plug, we're going to pull back on that white locking tab, push down and gently lift up. Then we'll take the RaceChip female end of the wiring harness, plug that in place and lock it in with the white locking tab. And then plug in the RaceChip male end of the wiring harness into that OEM sensor and lock it in place with the gray locking tab. Using the 4 smaller supplied zip ties, go ahead and route and zip tie the RaceChip harness away from any hot and moving parts. If you're going to zip tie to any electrical or fluid lines, make sure to not zip tie too tight to pinch off the flow of electricity or fluids. Next up is to trim the excess ends off the zip ties to give everything a nice OEM look. Now we're going to reinstall the air box on top of the engine. Once again, we're going to grab our 6mm socket and retighten the hose clamps. Now we're going to reinstall the strap bar. I'm going to start at the back here, slide that in place. And the rest of it, make sure to not break these 2 little plastic fingers off. And don't forget to reinstall our quick release cables for the hood, as well as the sensor for the suspension. And reinstall the plastic clips by simply pressing down. And the last step here is to reinstall the 2 plastic covers and lock them in place. With everything reinstalled, we're now ready to install the RaceChip unit itself. To install the RaceChip unit, we're first going to start with attaching our 4 mounting tabs. The really nice thing about our mounting tabs, if you ever need to remove the RaceChip for any reason, you can press down on the 4 corners of the locking tabs to remove the RaceChip but leave the locking tabs in place. Also, they allow you to mount vertically or horizontally using the 2 longer supplied zip ties. So to install the RaceChip, we're first going to remove the deactivation plug. You want to hang on to this. If you ever need to remove the RaceChip and revert the car back to stock for any reason, this is what will do it. I'd suggest putting this in your glove box or your center console. Do not throw this away. Now with the deactivation plug removed, we're going to go ahead and install the RaceChip directly into the FCI plug, locking it in place with the purple FCI plug. Now it's really important the first time we install a unit we get no LED to illuminate, or if we have the RS or S, that we get no green light to illuminate. The very first time we install a unit, we don't want any power going to the device. When mounting the RaceChip, we want to stay away from any hot and moving parts. We also want to mount the unit in a place that's hard for moisture to get to. Generally, anywhere near the headlights or the fuse box is a good idea, as it's difficult for moisture to get there. Start in the default setting of the RaceChip for the first time you test drive the car. If everything works great, you can then move the RaceChip to the next level up. Be aware that the car needs some time to adapt before releasing the full performance upgrade. Now, get out, drive, and enjoy your RaceChip.